So, yesterday I talked about insanity and ingenuity in regards to a trauma. Well, actually, no, I talked mainly about insanity and ingenuity in general. So, today I'm going to relate it to a trauma. So, when a trauma initially happens, there are changes in the person because they have gone through something difficult, they've gone through something different, and they have changed in the process of that trauma. Now, due to those changes, they are no longer a person they were before the trauma. So there are going to be changes, and because some people are not used to the changes or will not become used to the changes, they might seem insane because they are no longer the same person. But in reality, the person has changed due to the circumstance they found themselves in, which would be exactly what would happen to anyone else if they found themselves in a specific trauma. They would change because they are no longer. The circumstance demands a different type of personality. Now, not a lot of people understand this because they compare you to the person you were before. That's one. Now, the second thing, ingenious. Okay, now the ingenious happens when you are you don't appreciate the person you become and you absolutely want to improve. So you make it a point to find ways to improve yourself in regards to the person in regards to who you have become, to become the person you want to be, right? So that is when the ingenious kicks in. The fact that you want to change, you want to improve, you want to push yourself farther than you've been before. And that is not an absolute. Some people don't become ingenious in regards to whatever it is that they're working on or whatever it is they're working with. They could possibly want to stay as they are because they don't feel comfortable or they don't believe that they can. And I am here to prove to you that you can. And I mean, it can be done. I'm not saying it's not going to take time, effort, work, sweat, blood, and tears. It definitely will. But if you're willing to put up the sacrifices to improve, it is definitely going to happen. Okay? And so ultimately, it is your choice of what you choose to do. I am going to give you an example. Okay, so I was talking about insanity versus ingeniousness. And my example is that after my TBI, my severe TBI, which means a big bruise on my brain, there are 4 sizes of TBI. I had the 3rd size, and so it was pretty serious. Now, one of the things that happened after my accident, neurologically speaking, was that I became impulsive. Meaning, the first thing that popped into my head, I would do. I would say, I would act, right? I wouldn't think. I got the impulse, I did the impulse. I got it, and I said it, right? So that is what it was. It was like as if I went back to the mental age of a teenager. And so, being an adult, right? I was a young adult. I was 19 when this happened. So, being a young adult, being considered as being trained, socially trained and socially able to interact with others, that was the main idea. But because of the fact that I was missing a sort of finesse and some politeness or some finesse, some knowing when to keep my mouth shut type of thing, when it was time for me to speak and when it wasn't. Because of that lack of know-how, right? In French we'd say savoir vivre, the knowledge of how to live, okay, politeness, either case, with a lack of knowledge, with that lack of knowledge, I was considered insane, right? Well, not, I don't know what I was considered, but I was considered not normal. Okay. Well, not normal in the sense that where I should have been at the mental age of 19 and where I was in retrospect to the what had happened to me, I was completely in my right mind. But people expected me to act like a 19-year-old when in fact I was acting like a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old, right? Like there's a big discrepancy between 15 and 19, even if the age gap is only 4 years. I digress. So, what I'm trying to say is people, when you are in quote unquote the insane stage, okay, people don't necessarily take the time to try and understand where you're coming from. They label you one thing and then they leave you to rot, right? To figure it out by yourself. Because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to deal with it. So they just leave it up to you or they leave it up to professionals. Now, the ingeniousness is when you decide to take your matter into your own hands and to fix it yourself. Now, I have to say that I didn't do this on my own. I had my parents and my therapists worked to help me overcome this trait of mine, right? This impulsiveness of mine. And it worked for a little bit until I started noticing that there was a whole nother level of impulsiveness that was kicking in, and I needed to be on top of that because then my parents were like, okay, well, this is weird. So does this mean that you can't leave the house anymore? They're not going to leave you go to social events because we don't know if you're going to make a gigantic fool of yourself? Talar, no, fix it. Quote unquote, right? So that's when the ingenious happened because people had seen me be impulsive. People had categorized me as being impulsive. People were not necessarily helping me to become in control of my impulsiveness other than my parents and my therapists. But everyone else was like, this is the new Talar. Okay, let's go. Bye. Type of thing. You know? So, myself, with the help of my parents and my therapists, we had to rein it all in. And that happened. And now, it's like, it's a done deal. So people don't necessarily think of where I was. Or when they do think of where I was, they don't think of how I got to this stage, how I got to this end result, which is me being able to manage my impulsiveness. No, they just think impulsive talar, in control talar. They don't see the in between. They just see the here and now, as if both of them were stuck together. And I just woke up one day and I was poof, in control of my impulses. Not how it happens. There is going to be a time when you are going to have to work with it and become a master at it. And so I did mention about the 4 stages of learning, which is unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence. So these 4 stages are things that you are going to have to be familiar with. And the way that I came about managing my impulsiveness was exactly this. It was the fact that I went from not knowing that I had no control over my impulses to knowing that I had no control over my impulses, which happened quite quickly. Then to me knowing that I needed to control my impulses, which took at least a 7-year long period, minimally, if not 8 or 10. Okay, I'm now at 16 years, well, 15 years of my accident, right? So, you lose track of time in a way, but ultimately, this took over at least 12 years, right? At least minimum. Minimum. Okay? And so it will take time, but it is doable. And it took longer because I was dealing with neurons. Neurons take a long, long time to improve. To heal neurons, to rearrange neurons, it takes time. And you can't sit down and rearrange a neuron one by one. There's no such thing. You have to willpower it to change. It can be done. It takes time, but it can be done. So ultimately what I'm saying is that a personality shift is a doable thing. It might take time, like I mentioned, but it is doable. And so it's kind of like you're gonna look insane until you don't. You know what I mean? So the insanity part, which is the part where you are not who you were before, is gonna take so long until at the end you're gonna be normal because you've overcome your quote unquote insanity, which is you're actually dealing with your new reality. But to other people, they don't necessarily come to grips with the fact that you have shifted timelines. Or you can say that they don't necessarily come to grips with the fact that you had to change, so your timeline changed. And so now you rechange your timeline. So you are basically jumping timelines from the person you were before your accident to the person you became after your accident to the person you became after your therapy to the person you became after your personal therapy, meaning the work you did after therapy. Because, so yes, you heal the first part, which is what the therapy is meant for, but the little breadcrumbs, the little dust bunnies around your personality that were not fixed by the therapy, okay, you need to work on them yourself, and you can't stop, because if you stop, you start to regress, and that is what you want to stay away from. So if you want to move towards your ultimate objective, you need to continue pushing forward. And the best way to continue pushing forward is to make it fun, is to make it something that is enjoyable, something that you want to achieve, attain, something that you need to attain for your mental sanity. Okay? So, what is a change that you absolutely want to make and that you cannot wait to see the end result? Meaning that you will put in the necessary amount of work, even more, to surpass your objective, because you are no longer happy with the current state you are in. So, ponder that.